The Kelver Command Center moved through the darkness of space like a giant metal hawk. The ship was bigger than a small city, with weapons that could destroy entire planets. Inside, in a room filled with blue light and screens showing maps of the world below, Commander Dexcar stood and looked at information about his new job. The planet below was called Maxi 7. It was beautiful, with green forests and tall mountains. But more important than beauty, it was full of valuable things. The ground held crystals and metals worth trillions of credits. The Dominion Council, which controlled much of the galaxy, had hired the Kelver to do one simple job: kill the human soldiers who were causing trouble on the planet. Dexcar was a tall creature with blue skin and 4 arms. His eyes were large and black, and his mind was sharp from 50 years of fighting in wars across many star systems. He had never lost a battle. His soldiers, the Kelver, were known everywhere in space as the ones who could not be beaten. They had weapons that were better than anyone else's. They had armor that could stop almost anything. They had trained for battle better than any other species. The commander looked at the report on the screen. It said there were about 300 humans on the planet. 300. Dexcar felt like smiling. He had won battles against enemies with 100 times more soldiers. He had fought against machines that thought and could plan strategy. He had beaten species that had weapons just as good as his own. Now he was being paid to fight 300 humans who came from a planet called... The humans were not impressive. They had arrived on a broken ship, barely able to fly. Their weapons used old technology, nothing like the advanced machines the Kelver carried. Their armor was weak and thin. Their soldiers had short lives, maybe 80 or 90 years if they were lucky. How could they possibly stand against the Kelver, who lived for hundreds of years and had learned to fight in 100 different worlds? Captain Varnix walked into the room and bowed with respect. He was a younger Kelver, still under 100 years old, but he was fast and cruel in battle. Dexcar liked him for this reason. "Commander, our soldiers are ready," Varnix said. "We have 4,000 warriors prepared for the attack. We have heavy weapons, assault ships, and armor that cannot be broken. When do you want us to start?" Dexcar turned away from the screen and looked at his captain. "Send them down tomorrow when the sun rises on that world. Tell them to kill everyone who fights back. Tell them to take control of the mining facilities. The Dominion Council wants the crystals and metals, not the land itself. So we will keep the facilities intact. We will kill the soldiers, and then the work can start again." "What about bombing from space?" Varnix asked. "We could destroy their positions in minutes without losing any soldiers." "No," Dexcar said. "If we destroy the facilities, the Dominion Council will not pay us full price. We take this job the hard way. We go down and kill them face to face. It will be good training for our younger soldiers anyway. 4,000 against 300. It will be finished in a week. Maybe less." Varnix left the room to give orders to the troops. Dexcar stood alone again, looking at the planet. He thought about the easy money he would make. He thought about how quickly the humans would die. He did not think about what he did not know down on the planet. In the tall mountains to the north, there was a cave hidden inside the rock. The cave was not natural. Humans had dug it out and made it into a command center. The walls were covered with computers and screens. Maps showed where the Kelver forces were. More maps showed the mountains and valleys where humans could fight best. Captain Marcus Webb sat in front of the biggest screen. He was a big man with brown hair and a serious face. He had been a soldier for more than 20 years before he came to this planet. He had fought in many countries on Earth. He had learned to fight in deserts and mountains and cities. He had learned to think about how enemies would move and what they would do. Marcus was not afraid of the Kelver. Fear would not help him anyway. But he was very careful and very serious about what was coming. His team was small, only 300 soldiers. Most of them were special operators, the best fighters that Earth had produced. Some were Navy SEALs who had trained in water and in air. Some were Army Rangers who were fast and strong. Some were Delta Force soldiers who had learned to fight in the darkest, most dangerous situations. Some were Marines who had trained to fight and die if necessary. The Kelver thought this would be easy. The Kelver was wrong. Lieutenant Sarah Powell came into the room and stood next to Marcus. She was a strong woman with short black hair. She had trained for years in military special operations. She understood how to make soldiers work as a team, how to use the ground to help you fight, and how to win against bigger forces. "The Kelver are coming down tomorrow," she said. "Our scouts saw the ships getting ready." "How many?" Marcus asked, though he already knew the answer. 4,000 to start. "Maybe more after," Sarah said. Marcus looked at the map. He looked at the mountains where his soldiers were hiding. He looked at the valleys and the passes where he could control who moved where. He looked at all the places where the Kelver would think they could walk, and he saw the traps instead. "Good," he said. "We are ready. Get every team to their positions. Make sure everyone checks their weapons and ammunition. Make sure everyone understands the plan. We will not try to fight them in the open. We will not meet them where they are strong. We will fight where they are weak. We will use what we know and they do not know. We will use this mountain like it is part of our body." Sarah nodded and left to tell the other soldiers. Marcus stayed and looked at the map. He knew what was coming. He knew it would be hard and dangerous. He knew that some of his soldiers would not come home. But he also knew something that the Kelver did not know. He knew that humans were dangerous when they had to be. He knew that humans would not give up, no matter how many times they were knocked down. He knew that the Kelver had never fought enemies like this before. The night was quiet on Maxi 7. In the sky, the stars shone down. The Kelver ships stayed in space above the planet, waiting for morning to come. Inside the mountains, the humans checked their weapons one more time. They cleaned their guns. They loaded their ammunition. They thought about home and family. They knew what tomorrow would bring, and they were ready. Tomorrow, the Kelver would learn why the galaxy should never underestimate humans. The sun rose over Maxi 7, and the Kelver attack began. Hundreds of assault ships came down from the sky, carrying soldiers and weapons. The ships were sleek and silver, made from metal that could not break. They landed in the wide valleys at the base of the mountains. Thousands of Kelver soldiers jumped out, their armor shining in the bright light. Commander Dex Carr watched from the command ship above. On his screens, he saw his soldiers moving forward. They were organized and fast. They had weapons that could shoot farther and faster than human weapons. They had armor that could stop bullets and explosions. Everything was going according to plan. The Kelver moved like a dark wave toward the mountains where the humans were hiding. 2,000 Kelver soldiers advanced through the valley. Their commanders expected to find humans who would be scared and unprepared. They expected easy victory. What they found instead was death. When the Kelver entered the narrow valley that led into the mountains, the humans were waiting on the high ground. The humans had spent weeks studying every rock and every tree in this place. They knew exactly where to stand and where to aim. When the Kelver came into the valley, they had no place to hide and no way to escape. The first shots came from rifles held by human soldiers hidden in the rocks above. These were not wild shots from scared people. These were careful shots, each one aimed at a target. Each shot killed a Kelver soldier or wounded one badly. The Kelver tried to shoot back, but the humans were too high up and too well hidden. More shots came. Explosions started going off. The humans had put bombs in the rocks days before. Now they pushed buttons and the ground itself attacked the Kelver. Rocks came down. Dirt flew into the air. Kelver soldiers screamed and fell. Marcus Webb sat in the command cave and watched information come in from his soldiers. He could see through cameras hidden in the rocks. He could hear radio messages from every position. He watched as the Kelver tried to advance and failed. "First group is stopping," Sarah said, looking at the screen. "They are falling back to get more soldiers." "They will send more," Marcus said. "They think they can just keep throwing bodies at us until we run out of bullets. We need to be ready for the second wave." The second wave came 2 hours later. This time, the Kelver sent more soldiers, maybe 1,500 more. They tried a different route, thinking maybe they could go around the humans. But the humans had prepared many different routes. Everywhere the Kelver tried to go, there were humans waiting with guns and bombs. A young Kelver soldier named Krenther ran toward a human position, his gun ready to shoot. He was fast and strong, and he had fought in 10 wars. But his training came from fighting enemies with technology like his own. Enemies that fought in open ground. Enemies that tried to defeat him with power and speed. He did not know how to fight enemies that would not fight him in the open. He did not know about snipers who could shoot him from so far away that he could not even see them. Krenther heard a sound, like a whip cracking in the air. Pain exploded in his chest. He fell to the ground and tried to get up, but he could not. His armor had stopped many bullets before, but this bullet had come from so far away, traveling so fast that even his armor could not stop it. By the middle of the day, the Kelver had lost over 1,000 soldiers. Dexkar was confused. He had not expected this. He had not expected the humans to fight like this. The Kelver were used to fighting other species that fought the same way they did. They were used to standing in front of their enemies and shooting at each other. They were not used to enemies who refused to fight that way. Captain Vornix came to speak with Dexkar on the command ship. The young captain looked worried, which was unusual for a Kelver. "Commander, we are losing many soldiers," Vornix said. "The humans are not fighting like normal soldiers. They do not come out to fight in the open. They hide in the rocks and shoot from far away. We cannot hit them because we cannot see them. What do you want us to do?" Dexkar thought about this. He did not like problems. He liked simple solutions. He had always believed that more soldiers and better weapons would solve any problem. But the humans seemed to have a different idea about how war should work. "Send the third wave," Dexkar said. "Use all remaining forces. If we kill them all at once, they cannot hide or run. They will have to come out and fight us face to face. That is when we will destroy them." Vornix bowed and left to give the order. Down in the mountains, Marcus and Sarah watched as more and more Kelver soldiers came toward them. The humans had been ready for this. They had prepared the best places for fighting. They had dug trenches and made walls from rocks. They had put explosives on paths where the Kelver had to walk. They had studied the wind and the sun, and the way sound traveled so they could shoot with perfect accuracy. Marcus called together all the team leaders by radio. "This is the moment we trained for," he said. "The Kelver are showing us everything they have. They think numbers will beat us. They think their weapons are better than our brains. They are wrong. We will show them what humans can do. We will show them that we are not easy to kill. We will make them understand that they have made a terrible mistake coming here." Each human soldier understood what they had to do. Each soldier had trained for this their whole life. This was what it meant to be special operations. This was what it meant to be a human soldier fighting for something that mattered. The sun began to set over Maxi 7. The valley was covered with bodies and wreckage. The Kelver had lost half their original force. But the humans were still there, still fighting, still refusing to break. For the first time since the war started, Dexkar began to understand that maybe, just maybe, he had made a mistake. 3 days had passed since the first Kelver soldiers landed on Maxi 7. 3 days of constant fighting. 3 days of blood and death. The Kelver had lost more soldiers than they had expected to lose in a whole month. But they kept fighting because the X-Car had ordered them to fight. Kelver soldiers did not question orders. They did what they were told. The humans had not run away. They had not tried to escape to space or hide underground. They stood their ground and fought harder with each passing day. The Kelver were confused by this. In their experience, enemies fought until they could not fight anymore, and then they surrendered or died. The humans seemed different. The humans fought like they had something worth dying for. Marcus Webb was tired. He had not slept in 30 hours. His body hurt from the fighting and from sleeping on hard ground. But his mind was still sharp. He studied maps and reports and tried to guess what the Kelver would do next. Sarah Powell sat next to him, equally tired, equally focused. "They will make a big attack soon," Marcus said. "They are losing, and losing means the X-Car will throw everything at us to change what is happening. It is what any commander would do." Sarah nodded. "We are ready. Every position is defended. We have food and ammunition. We have medical stations set up. We are ready." But ready for what was coming was not the same as ready to see it happen. When the Kelver made their big attack, it was like watching an ocean of soldiers come toward you. 5,000 Kelver, every soldier that the X-Car could send, came down from the ships in a massive assault across multiple valleys at the same time. The humans were spread thin now. They had fought 3 days of battles and had lost soldiers themselves. Some were injured and could not fight. Some were so tired that their hands shook when they held their guns. But they held the lines because that is what soldiers do. They hold the line even when everything inside them wants to break and run. A Kelver captain named Velthax was leading soldiers into the Eastern Valley. Velthax was old by Kelver standards, almost 200 years old. He had fought in more wars than most Kelver could count. He had never been defeated. He believed that his experience and strength would carry him to victory on this planet just like it had everywhere. Else what Velthax did not understand was that he was fighting against an enemy that was different from everything in his history. The humans did not fight like warriors from other species. They did not try to win by being stronger or having better weapons. They fought like hunters. They moved through the mountains like they were part of the land itself. They appeared and struck and then disappeared before the Kelver could hit back. Velthax chased Marcus Webb deeper into the highlands. He was sure that if he could catch the human commander and kill him, the other humans would break and run. This is how it always worked. Kill the leader and the rest would fall apart. But Marcus was not running away. Marcus was moving with purpose. Marcus was choosing the ground where they would fight. When Velthax finally caught up to Marcus, when he thought he had trapped the human in a canyon with no way out, Velthax made his mistake. He did not realize that the humans had been in this canyon for 3 days. They had studied every rock and every path. They had put weapons and ammunition in hidden places. They had made plans for exactly this situation. When Velthax's soldiers came into the canyon, thinking they had the humans trapped, the humans attacked from above and from both sides. Velthax's entire squad, 40 soldiers, were killed in less than 2 minutes. Velthax himself barely escaped with his life, and when he made it back to the Kelver lines, something inside him was broken. "I do not understand," Velthax said to the other Kelver officers. "I have fought in 100 wars. I have defeated every enemy that I ever faced. But I cannot defeat these humans. They do not fight like soldiers. They fight like they know something we do not know." The other Kelver officers did not want to hear this. The Kelver were proud. They had been taught that they were superior to every other species in the galaxy. They had been taught that their weapons and their armor and their bodies made them unstoppable. But the evidence was showing them something different. By the end of the third day, the Kelver had lost almost 5,000 soldiers. Half of Dexcar's original force was gone. The humans had lost soldiers too, but they had many fewer to lose. The mathematics were starting to show a very different picture from what Dexcar had expected. Dexcar stood in the command center and looked at the numbers. In 1 week, he had expected to win with minimal losses. Instead, he was losing soldiers at a rate that would destroy his entire force if the fighting continued for much longer. He looked at the intelligence reports again, trying to find something he had missed, some weakness in the humans that he could use. What he found was that the humans were not weak at all. The humans were actually more dangerous than any enemy he had fought. They were dangerous because they understood something about fighting that the Kelver had forgotten or never learned. They understood that a smaller force could defeat a larger force if they used intelligence and planning and knowledge of the land. They understood that winning was not about having the biggest army or the best weapons. Winning was about how you thought and how you moved and how you made decisions. Marcus Webb stood with his soldiers as darkness fell on Maxi 7. They were tired and hurt, but they were alive. The Kelver soldiers were also tired and hurt, but there were fewer of them now. With each battle, the odds got better for the humans. "We are going to win this," Marcus said to his soldiers. "Not because we are stronger, not because we have better weapons. We will win because we are smarter and because we will never give up. That is what makes humans dangerous. That is what makes us worth fighting for." The soldiers cheered, even though they were tired. They knew their commander was right. They knew they were going to hold this ground no matter what happened next. Dexcar called an emergency meeting with all of his surviving captains. They gathered in the command center of the main ship, and their faces showed something that Kelver faces rarely showed. Fear. Not the fear of death, but the fear of losing. The fear of being defeated. The commander looked at each captain in turn. Then he began to speak, and his voice was different from before. It was not the voice of a warrior who was certain of victory. It was the voice of someone who understood that something had gone very wrong. "We have lost 5,000 soldiers," Dexcar said. "We have achieved nothing. The mining facilities are still controlled by the humans. The humans still control the mountains, and I do not see a clear path to victory anymore." Captain Vornix tried to maintain the old confidence. "Commander, we still have forces in space. We can bomb the mountains. We can destroy the human positions from above without losing any more soldiers." "No," Dexcar said, and his voice was hard. "The Dominion Council hired us to take control of the facilities and the land. If we destroy the mountains, we destroy what we were hired to protect. We would lose the contract and the payment. We would also lose more soldiers doing it because the humans have weapons that can reach into space." Another captain, Keshner, was the oldest warrior in the room. He had fought in many wars and had learned to see things that younger soldiers could not see. When he spoke, the other captains listened because his experience had always kept them alive. "Commander, I need to speak truth, even if it is not what we want to hear," Keshner said. "We are fighting an enemy that does not fight like us. We do not know how to defeat them because they refuse to fight the way we expect them to fight. Every time we send soldiers forward, they disappear into the mountains and kill our soldiers from places we cannot reach. Every time we try to advance, we walk into traps that have been prepared for days. This is not a war we can win with what we have." The room fell silent. No Kelver officer wanted to admit defeat. The Kelver were taught from birth that they were the strongest and the best, and that no enemy could stand against them. But the evidence on the screens and in the casualty reports told a different story. A younger captain, hot-headed and proud, stood up. "We should fight to the last soldier. We should never retreat. We are Kelver. We do not accept defeat." But Dexcar raised his hand to silence the young captain. You are right that we are Kelver. But being Kelver does not mean we are stupid. We are mercenaries. We fight for payment. If the cost of fighting becomes too high, then the job becomes unprofitable. And I will not waste soldiers to prove a point. Dexcar turned to his communication officer. Send a message to the Dominion Council. Tell them that the cost of this operation has become unacceptable. Tell them we have lost thousands of soldiers and gained nothing. Ask them if they want us to continue, and if so, what additional payment they will provide. The message was sent into space. All the Kelver could do now was wait for the answer down on the planet. Marcus Webb and his soldiers did not know that this message had been sent. But they were watching the Kelver carefully. They noticed that the Kelver attacks had become smaller and less organized. They noticed that the Kelver seemed to be preparing something, maybe preparing to leave. Do not let them see that we have noticed, Marcus told his officers. Keep the soldiers in position. Keep the weapons ready. If they try to retreat, we will attack. But if they are planning something else, we will be ready for that too. While the Kelver waited for an answer from the Dominion Council, Dexcar studied the battle reports more carefully than he ever had before. He looked at how many soldiers each human attack had used, and it was always so few compared to the number of Kelver they killed. He looked at how the humans chose their positions, and every position was chosen for advantage, not for ease of defense. He looked at how the humans moved, and they moved like they had been studying this land for months, not days. Then it hit Dexcar like a physical blow. The humans had been studying this land. They had arrived months ago, not days ago. They had been preparing this battle the whole time, knowing that someone would eventually come to attack them. They had turned the entire mountain range into a weapon. Dexcar realized that he had made a critical error in his thinking. He had assumed that a smaller force with older weapons would be easy to defeat. He had not considered that a smaller force with better planning might be much harder to defeat. He had not understood that in war, intelligence and preparation were sometimes more important than numbers and weapons. When the answer came back from the Dominion Council, it was what Dexcar expected. The payment would not be increased. The work was valuable, but not essential. If the Kelver wanted to continue, they would do so with the original payment, not a higher one. The implication was clear. It was time to leave. Dexcar called all the surviving soldiers together and told them the truth. They were withdrawing from Maxi 7. The contract was finished. The humans had defeated them. For the first time in Kelver history, the Kelver were retreating from a battle without having achieved their goal. The soldiers did not understand this. They did not know what to think. But they were also relieved because they would not have to die anymore. They would go back to space. They would live. Marcus Webb heard that the Kelver were preparing to leave. He watched through the cameras as the Kelver soldiers moved back to their ships. He watched as the ships began to rise into the sky. He understood that the Kelver had made a choice. They had decided that the cost of victory was too high. When the last Kelver ship disappeared into space, Marcus turned to Sarah and smiled for the first time in days. "We did it," he said simply. "We won." And that was the truth. The ships carrying the Kelver rose higher and higher until they were just points of light in the sky. Then they disappeared completely, jumping through space to go back to wherever they had come from. The humans watched them go, hardly believing what had just happened. Marcus Webb stood on a high rock and looked out across the landscape that had been a battlefield for 3 days. The valley was scarred with explosions. Bodies were scattered across the ground. Equipment was broken and burned. But standing in the middle of all this destruction were the humans, tired but alive and victorious. Sarah Powell came and stood next to Marcus. She was dirty and exhausted, and there was blood on her sleeve from a wound that had been bandaged. But her eyes were clear and bright with the knowledge of what they had just accomplished. "We should start moving the wounded to the medical facility," she said. We need to count how many soldiers we lost and treat those who are injured. Marcus nodded. Get all the team leaders together. We need to make sure the mountain perimeter is still secure. The Kelver might come back. We need to be ready if they do. But even as he said this, Marcus did not believe they would come back. He understood that the Kelver had learned something important. They had learned that you cannot win every battle just by having more soldiers and better weapons. They had learned that some enemies refused to be defeated the easy way. In the medical center carved into the mountain, the human doctors worked all night to treat the wounded. Some soldiers had serious injuries that would never fully heal. Some would never fight again. But they were alive, and that was what mattered. Compared to the Kelver losses, the human losses were small. The next morning, Marcus called all the soldiers together in the largest open area of the base. Nearly 300 soldiers stood around him, and he could see in their faces the weight of what they had been through. They had fought alien warriors with better technology and larger numbers. They had won because they were brave and smart, and because they refused to give up. You have done something the people across the galaxy will be talking about for a very long time, Marcus said to them. You have defeated the Kelver. You have shown that humans can stand against anyone, no matter how powerful they seem. But this is only the beginning. Our work here is not finished. We need to repair the mining facilities and prepare this colony for the future. The soldiers cheered, but it was a tired cheer. They were ready to rest now. They were ready to do regular work instead of fighting for their lives. Over the following weeks, information about what had happened on Maxi 7 spread through the galaxy. The story went through trade networks and communication channels and reached every corner of known space. The story was simple. Humans had defeated the Kelver. Humans, who had arrived with nothing but 300 soldiers and determination, had defeated the most feared mercenary force in the galaxy. Some species did not believe the story. Some thought it was a rumor or an exaggeration. But the Kelver themselves confirmed it, and when the Kelver spoke, other species listened. The Kelver were famous for fighting hard and never retreating. That they had retreated from a battle made the human victory even more impressive. Messages came, too, Marcus Webb from other groups and other planets. Some wanted to hire human soldiers for their own wars. Some wanted to learn how the humans had defeated the Kelver. Some just wanted to know more about the humans and how they fought. Marcus did not accept the job offers. He and his soldiers stayed on Maxis 7 and worked to build the colony into something real and permanent. They worked to show that humans were not just soldiers, but people who could build and create and live in peace when they were not fighting for survival. But the message had been sent out into the galaxy, and it could not be taken back. The message was clear and simple. Do not underestimate humanity. The humans did not have the strongest bodies. They did not have the most advanced weapons. They did not live the longest lives. What the humans had was intelligence and courage and determination. What the humans had was the ability to refuse to give up, even when everything seemed impossible. Dexcar sat in his ship and thought about what had happened on Maxi 7. He had gone to a planet expecting an easy victory and a quick payment. Instead, he had lost thousands of soldiers and learned a lesson that challenged everything he believed about warfare. He had learned that technology was not everything. He had learned that numbers were not everything. He had learned that a smaller, smarter force could defeat a larger force, if the smaller force was willing to work hard and never give up. The Kelver commander knew that he would not make the same mistake again. The next time he faced humans, he would respect them as a dangerous enemy. He would not assume that they would fight like every other species. He would understand that humans might think differently and fight differently and refuse to accept defeat even when it seemed like the only choice. Years later, when younger Kelver asked the old soldiers about Maxi 7, the stories had grown into legend. The story said that humans were deathworlders, creatures from a harsh planet that made them stronger than any other species. The story said that humans had something inside them that made them refuse to break, no matter what happened. The story said that the bravest soldiers in the galaxy were the ones who came from Earth. Marcus Webb did not know that his name was becoming famous across the stars. He did not know that young aliens were hearing stories about how he had defeated the Kelver. He was just a soldier who had done what soldiers do. He had defended his people. He had refused to give up. He had found a way to win against impossible odds. On Maxi 7, the mining facilities worked again. The colony grew. Humans built homes and farms and schools. They built a future for themselves in a galaxy that had learned to respect them. And in the mountains where the battle had happened, the humans left a memorial to those who had died. On the memorial, they carved words that explained what had happened there and why it mattered. The words said simply, "Here, humans stood against impossible odds. Here, humans refused to give up. Here, humans proved that determination and courage are worth more than weapons and numbers. Here, humans changed the galaxy forever." And it was true.